Hey Vitality, it's Matt Adlard here, and today I'm going to show you how to make homemade fresh pasta. And it's one of those things that we eat all the time, but actually it is so easy to make at home with just a few simple ingredients. And I'm going to show you 3 of my favourite shapes, but you can use this recipe to make any shape of pasta you want. And if you've never made homemade fresh pasta before, it is the most rewarding feeling when you eat it for the first time. So get your ingredients out, and let's go.
Taking your semolina flour and pour it onto a work surface. Now you could do this in a bowl or a stand mixer or a food processor, but all the TV chefs do it like this. So I thought, why don't we be TV chefs for a day? And we're gonna create a well with our fingers, and then I did a one-handed egg crack. I know, so professional, right? You do not need to do that, just do it with 2 hands. And crack 3 eggs in total into the center of your semolina flour, and whisk it up with a fork until they're combined. Again, you could just whisk those eggs beforehand and pour them in, but it does look kind of cool whisking the eggs, doesn't it? Then you are going to take that scraper or your hand or a spatula, and what you want to do is you want to very gently work that semolina flour into the eggs. And initially, it will look very dry and it will look like the semolina isn't going to incorporate, but it will, I promise you. Just keep working it and compacting it until all that semolina has disappeared. Then we're going to knead the dough. So I'm going to take the palm of my hand, I'm going to stretch the dough out, pushing it away from me, folding it back in itself, turning it 90 degrees and stretching out again. I'm doing this quite slowly here, but you can do it a lot faster when you're doing it in real life. And the idea is to knead this for about 5 to 10 minutes until the dough becomes very soft. It will kind of depend on how quickly you do it. Once it is soft, we are going to chill and relax that dough.
So you're going to wrap that dough up now, and you're going to chill it in the fridge for about 30 minutes to relax, but you could also wrap it up, leave it in there for a couple of days and come back to it. And like I said earlier, we're going to make 3 of my favourite shapes. So we're going to make a farfalle, we're going to make a pappardelle, and we're going to make a ravioli. But this recipe is so versatile. You can make spaghetti, you can make tagliatelle, you can make many other pasta shapes that I can't name off the top of my head. And you don't need any fancy equipment. All we're really going to use is a rolling pin. But if you do have a pasta machine or a pasta roller, that will make your life a whole lot easier.
Now, if you don't have a fancy pasta rolling machine, do not worry, because we are going to do this whole process by hand using a rolling pin. I've taken the dough out of the fridge, I've cut it into 4 pieces, and this is one of those pieces. I'm going to lightly flour this piece of dough, and I'm just going to roll back and forth with my rolling pin, rotating it 90 degrees every so often. And the idea here is to get it as thin as possible. Don't worry too much about the shape, but we want to ideally roll it into kind of a long oval shape. And it will take a little bit of time if you're using a rolling pin, but just keep working the dough, lightly flouring it until you end up with this nice thin oblong. And then we can move on to our farfalle. Now for the farfalle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this oval of dough into a nice neat rectangle. But don't worry about those offcuts of dough, we can reuse those later on. But trimming this into a rectangle makes things a lot easier when it comes to creating your farfalle. So I'm going to cut that rectangle in half, and then I'm going to use a slightly fluted pastry wheel, because the edge of a farfalle is actually typically fluted. So I'm going to cut strips of farfalle, little rectangles that are about 3 centimeters tall by 7 centimeters wide. That should give you a nice big piece of pasta. Then we're going to take that rectangle, that square of dough, and we're going to take the top and the bottom edge and kind of pinch them together with our finger and our thumb. If you pinch them in the center, you should end up with this nice little bow tie effect to your pasta. Next, we are going to make a pappardelle, which is probably the easiest shape to make. And again, I've got a rectangle of dough here which I have lightly floured, and I'm going to fold it in on itself multiple times. Take a sharp knife and cut the dough into even strips. It's really important that they're even in width, as then all your pappardelle strands will be the same size. Take one of those strands and unravel it, and you should be left with a nice piece of pappardelle. You're going to repeat that multiple times until you are left with a nice stack of fresh pappardelle. And finally, onto the ravioli. So again, I've got a rectangle of pasta dough here which I've lightly floured underneath. And I'm going to add my ricotta filling on top. It's a very simple filling. It's got ricotta, salt and pepper, a bit of Parmesan cheese, fresh nutmeg, some basil. You can use any filling you want. Just go around the outside of it with a little bit of egg wash. This will help to glue the second sheet of pasta that we are going to add on top. You want to carefully lay this on top. Then use your hands just to cup the outside of the filling. The idea here is to press as much air out as possible so that no air bubbles get stuck underneath the pasta. Once you've done it, you should be left with a nice even piece of ravioli, which we can use a cookie cutter or just use a knife, whatever you've got, just to stamp out or cut out those pieces of ravioli. Should be left with that very classic fluted design. Peel away that excess pasta dough, and there you have it. Beautiful pieces of ravioli, and you can add those to your collection of fresh pasta.
So there you have it, homemade fresh pasta. Now when it comes to cooking fresh pasta, it is a lot quicker than dry pasta. So take a big pot of salted boiling water, drop the pasta in, and it's going to take about 60 seconds to cook. So be careful not to overcook it. Then you can add your favorite sauces or toppings, and you will be a pasta master in no time at all. So if you do make it, please tag us at Vitality UK, and I will see you soon for more.